Hello, everybody of the world. This is the first video in the Blender Basics series, which is pretty much a repetition of what I do in my classes. And this particular video is going to be just simply on Blender navigation, how you move around the screen or the scene in Blender when you open it up, for people that have literally never used Blender before in their lives. If you've used Blender before, this video will be tremendously boring, so don't watch it. But if you haven't, it'll be fantastic. All right, so here we go. I'm going to open up Blender 4.0. That's what I'm using for this video. You might have a more recent version of Blender. 4.5 is the newest one. The navigation will work in basically the same way, so it doesn't really matter. You can use that version too. So when I open up Blender, I get a scene that looks like this. And to start off with, we're just going to take the new file, general scene. So I click on this and I have the most basic scene in Blender that comes as a default. So before I do anything, I'm going to turn on what I have. I've already installed this, the screencast keys. You don't have this as part of your Blender. I had to install it. But this is so that you can see what I'm doing with my mouse. So if I click on the left-hand mouse button, here you see, it turns white. If I click on the middle one, it turns white. And if I click on the right one, it turns white and I get a right-hand menu. So this little mouse button allows you to see what I'm doing with my mouse. It also allows you to see the keys that I'm pressing. If I press this and then I press, for example, S and X, it says it on top of the mouse button. So you see that I pressed S and X. If I press, for example, Shift, moves around. If I do this, for example, I move it, it says G, and if I press Control Z to undo what I just did, you see it, Control Z. So this is very useful for tutorials to understand what the person is actually doing on their mouse and their keyboard, since you can't actually see what their fingers are doing. All right, so let's get to the world of Blender navigation. When we come to Blender, when we turn it on, we get initially 3 objects. We have this cube, as you see here. We have this, which is called a camera and a light. Now, if I want to select any of these objects, right now, the cube is selected. You know it's selected because there's a yellow-orange line around it. If I want to select anything, it's very easy. Left mouse button. There you go. And I turned white for a moment on my little screencast keys. Oh, I want to select the light. Left mouse button. And as soon as you select it, it turns yellowy-orange. Now, there's another way to select things. If you look on the upper right, you have this list. This list is called the outliner. The outliner is very, very useful, especially when you start to have a lot of objects in the scene, and it's kind of cumbersome to click through things because they might be behind something and you can't find them. Well, you have the names of these things here. So let's say I wanted to select the cube. I just click on that, camera, light. Now for now, I'm going to disable a couple things so I can show you some basics in Blender, because some of these things are annoying. Right over here, on the upper, sort of near the right, you have this little thing, and it's called Show Overlays. If I just put my mouse on anything and let it sit there for a minute, I have an explanation of what it is. If I turn this off, I have just the objects. I don't have any other stuff in the scene, just the objects, as you see. See? I don't even have the camera, because the camera is not really officially an object. It's not a mesh. If I turn this back on, I see the light, I see the camera, I see and I see my cube. So I'm going to turn off a couple of things for now. I'm going to turn off this floor, which is the grid. And I'm even going to turn off these axes, which I'll get to later, and I'll show you how to do this. Okay, so now we just have a bunch of objects. Let's show you how to actually rotate around the scene. So let's say I was a bird, and I'm flying around, and I want to fly around the cube, for example. Well, it's very simple. Middle mouse button, and you move the mouse. So imagine, again, like I said, I'm not actually rotating the objects, and I will show you what I mean by that. I'll turn on these axes actually again, keep them on. Notice that when I do this, the objects do not move from their positions. This box is sitting there in the crosshairs of these 3 axes. It's not moving. I'm moving as the viewer. So I'm moving around the scene and seeing what's going on. So that is middle mouse button and just moving like that. If I didn't want to use the mouse, I could go up to this colorful little doodad and move that around. And that would do the same job of rotating around the scene. Now let's say I want to zoom in on something. For example, I want to zoom in on this cube. The easiest way to do this is middle mouse scroll wheel. I scroll like this, and that's as if I'm flying closer or further away from the object. So it's zooming in. If I didn't want to use the mouse, I could use this little button here, and that allows me to zoom in and out. It's a magnifying glass. So far, panning and zooming. Easier with the middle mouse button, but possible without it. All right, let's say that since I'm a little bird flying around and viewing this object, I'd like to move back and forth. Well, what I do is Shift and then my trusty middle mouse button. Shift and middle mouse. So if I didn't want to use the mouse, I could use this little hand, which is a grabbing thing. And again, it pans back and forth around the scene. Okay. Now, one thing that's very necessary to do is to select essentially your focal point. Right now, you see that I'm basically panning around when I rotate. I am kind of rotating around, I'll do it like this. I'm pretty much rotating around this cube. But what if I want to rotate around this camera? Like, what if I want the camera to be my focal point? Well, if I do this, you see that it's not really doing that. It's kind of like still rotating around the cube. To do that, it's very easy. I select the object and I press Control period on the numpad, as you see here. Control plus numpad dot. In the screencast keys, when it says plus, it doesn't mean you press a plus. It means you do this and that. So once again, if I'm out here, if I want to focus on this cube, Control period. And now I am able to rotate around whatever object I want. So let's say this light, Control period after I've selected it, and now I can rotate around the light. This, as you probably can see, would be very, very useful because you have often many objects in the scene and you want to be able to focus on those objects, not just rotate around a general scene. So that's very useful. Now let's get into what are called orthographic views. So I'm going to first of all, get rid of this little origin point, which we'll discuss in the next video. For now, I'm just going to click on this cube. Very, very, very often in 3D, you need to do what are called orthographic views. Front, back, sides, top, bottom. And you need to have them completely dead on when you model. You might be having, for example, a blueprint of the object you're modeling, and you're literally modeling on top of that blueprint. So you're really you need to have exact orthographic views. Orthographic means those flat, head-on views. So in order to really demonstrate this, I'm going to get rid of this cube because the cube doesn't show me the front and the back and the side are all exactly the same. So it's impossible to see what I'm doing. I'm going to delete this. So I click on this and I just press delete and it is gone. I'm going to add an object which has a front and a back and a side. So to do this, one way is I press the add button. And I get this menu of stuff that I can add into the scene. I'm going to add what's called a mesh, which is an editable polygon object, polygon-based object. So I'm going to add, we had a cube already, we don't want that. We want to add this thing called monkey. It is this monkey in Blender, which is called Suzanne for some reason. It's probably the guy's daughter or something like that, I would imagine. A loved one of the Blender developers. So Suzanne the monkey does have a front, a back, sides, and the bottom, so she's good for this demonstration. So let's say I want to see just the front of Suzanne, or any object. I press number pad 1. Look on the screen, number pad 1, or numpad 1. That is the front. Now, very important. Listen carefully. In Blender, to make the opposite of a function, I would press Control first, and then the function I want to do opposite of. So let me ask you a question. What's the opposite of a front view? It's a back view. So to do the back view, for the front view, I press 1. For the back view, I press Control 1, and that gives me the back, because Control means opposite of. Now, if I want to do the top view, I do 7. 7 is the top. What's the opposite of the top of something? That's right, kids, the bottom of something. So I want to do the bottom, Control 7. And I have the bottom of this monkey. You see the bottom of her chin and everything like that. So 1 is front, Control 1 is back. 7 is top, Control 7 is bottom. What about the sides? Well, by default, Blender gives you the side that it chooses is the left side of the object. So for example, if I am Suzanne, this is my left hand. This is Suzanne's left side. So to get the left side, you press 3, numpad 3. Well, what's the opposite of the left side? That's right, the right side. So if I want to do the right side, Control 3. And then now I have the right side. So let's recap this. Front, 1. Back, Control 1. Top, 7. Bottom, Control 7. Right hand side, Control 3. Left hand side, 3. And those are the basic orthographic views. Of course, you'll have a cheat sheet with this, but hopefully you'll get to know this mentally and memorize it, because you'd use it so much in Blender that you really need to remember these things. So that is really the basic navigation that we have so far. And in the next video, we'll be doing transformations. Thank you very, very much, and enjoy